to Deeply Disturbing Things,
the podcast.
I'm Macy.
And I'm Naomi.
And we're two anxious counselors who like to talk about deeply disturbing things.
Join us.
Hey.
Hey, it's a dark and stormy day.
On your side of town. It was sunny in my side of town.
It has been raining a lot. More than usual.
More than
for our region this time
usual.
Of year, especially.
Do we know that for a fact?
Well, last year we had a
Have
heat
you
dome.
checked your stats? I read the Facebook comment. What's it, Facebook? I don't know.
Podbean.
Someone commented because we put in our description stats that were slightly, no.
Inaccurate.
Off. Which
Whatever.
means that we got it from someone that had their stuff off.
Or it could be a typo.
Could be.
We're not sure. There's many explanations.
And we're bad at math.
We've explained that before.
But I loved your response, which really just we love it.
I just really deeply expressed gratitude for that person for pointing out our flaws and inaccuracies.
I love it.
So that we could, grow and improve.
I eat that shit for breakfast. Thanks. You could at least do us the justice of hopefully. I'm hoping that you actually listen to that episode.
Listen to it, yeah.
I don't know. Trolls be trolls, listeners be listeners. So I hope that you follow.
In stars be in stars.
In stars be in stars. I'm trying to get behind it. I really am.
It was your idea.
I know.
I get to go first today.
Like 2 hours in. I know. Butterflies got me excited. Yes, you get to go first today.
Butterflies? What? What are you talking about?
Your topic.
I'm not talking about butterflies.
Not today, but that was
before.
The day. That's what Instars came from.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting what that even was.
It was your thing.
You were admiring my beautiful rock.
You do
have on the desk here.
Magical rock.
I got it at a rock shop in Portland. And then I thought I lost it in our rental car. And I submitted a lost item report and it said, "What is it?" And I said, "A rock." Describe the rock. Well, small and round.
It's kind of oval. Blues and greens.
They never found it. And then I just found it last weekend. It was actually in the bottom of my suitcase. Oops. Sorry, budget rental car.
Poor person at budget rental car was going through that car looking for a rock.
Were they though? Were they really?
I mean, I like to think the best of people. So maybe.
They may have thought that I was trolling them.
That's true.
Find my rock.
Find it.
It is a beautiful rock though.
It is.
And it was quite pricey actually.
Good thing to lose.
Okay, here's my topic.
Take it away.
What the frack?
King? Disaster?
Did you ever watch Battlestar Galactica? I'm guessing no.
No.
On the show, frack is used as a stand-in for like fuck. It's like a space version of fuck. So they like use frack or fracking. But I'm not talking about that frack. I'm talking about hydraulic fracturing, which is known as fracking.
Okay, that's how I know it as.
If you're like me, you've always kind of wanted to know a little bit more about what this actually is.
Yeah, I have, anytime I've asked someone, they give you like that word, or not word, like a sentence about it that tells you nothing more than you knew before you heard that sentence. And I still, like, if you ask me now.
Like they say it's fracking. Like what is fracking? Oh, it's fracking.
It's
fracking.
It's where
it's hydraulic fracturing.
They do things in the dirt and frack.
Well, what I love about this podcast is it gives me the opportunity to really learn more about things that I'm curious about. Fracking is bad, I've learned.
That's kind of what I either hear, like fracking is bad, or there's people that are like, the people who say fracking are bad. So I don't know who to believe because I don't know much about fracking. I'm really fracking excited about this.
I am too. Fracking involves drilling into the earth and directing a high pressure mixture of water, sand, and chemicals, directs it at the rock layer, and it like fractures it and it releases the gas or oil inside.
Oh, okay.
Hydraulic fracturing.
Okay.
So the name makes sense.
Yeah.
Fracking is its nickname. So you drill this well down really far, 1 to 2 miles, And then once that vertical well reaches the deep layer of rock where the natural oil or gas exists, then it starts drilling horizontally along the rock layer. And that can go another mile along. So it's like it could be a straight down or at an angle. So like sort of like an L shaped.
Okay.
After the well is all drilled out, then fracking fluid is pumped down into the well at an extremely high pressure, in some cases exceeding 9,000 pounds per square inch. And I was like, well, what does that mean? So I researched, what is the pressure in a shower?
Because that's comparable. That's something we can relate
to. That's something
understand.
I can relate to.
Right.
So a shower, the max allowable pressure is 80 pounds per square inch. So with fracking, it's 9,000 pounds per square inch.
I wouldn't survive.
We wouldn't survive. We would be fracked.
And I would just like to preface, we are not geologists or fracking experts.
We have never said we are experts in anything.
No, and
we are just lovers of knowledge, and we like to learn.
And people
like to learn.
Oh, that's weird. Never mind.
I don't know what you're gonna say. Let's let
started
it go.
Saying people lovers. It's too soon. I haven't even drank anything.
People lovers.
We are people lovers.
I feel like that's going
a
little too far.
I don't even think that's fully true.
I am really sweaty for some reason.
It's hot in here. It's like moist. It's moist from the outside.
From all the rain out there.
Yeah.
The flowers are loving it. I mean, everything is growing.
I thought
really
you'd jump
tall.
back into the topic.
Oh no, flowers do not
The
love.
flowers are loving it.
Do not love the fracking.
Okay.
This pressure, this 9,000 pounds per square inch of pressure, fractures the rock, creates fissures and cracks so that the oil and gas can flow out. They also put in all kinds of additives and chemicals that serve all kinds of purposes. This could be detergents, salts, acids, alcohol, lubricants, disinfectants.
So many things.
They also pump in sand or other little particles. They're called proppants, and they do just that. They prop open the hole.
Ooh,
so
like
that
spacers.
The stuff can flow in and out.
Oh,
yes.
Interesting.
Once the underground rock is shattered and the proppants are in place, then the trapped reservoirs of gas and oil are released and pumped back to the surface, along with millions of gallons of flowback liquid.
Ooh.
This flowback liquid contains water and a number of contaminants, including radioactive material, heavy metals, hydrocarbons, and other toxins. This wastewater may be stored on site in pits, or it might be injected deep underground in wells. And nobody really has done any long-term studies yet, because fracking really blew up about 20 years ago, to know what the long-term effects are of putting all that poison deep underground.
Well, yeah, and I was just gonna say how I know that they handle like actual like radioactive material is it has to be contained and then buried and then monitored for maintenance.
I don't know if there's a lot of monitoring
or maintenance.
They just put it way underground and just hope everybody won't notice.
Well, and that's probably one of the problems from folks that I've heard this is a problem for, because it's on, yes, that may be their land that they're doing that with, but that then seeps into other people's water and landage.
You're going to be amazed.
Am I?
Yes.
Great.
By the shit show that is fracking. A brief history of fracking, if you will. This was originally called shooting the well. And that was a practice that dated back to 1862, has been credited to Colonel Edward Roberts. In the midst of fighting during the Civil War's Battle of Fredericksburg, Roberts had time amidst the carnage on the battlefield to note the impact that artillery had on narrow water-filled channels, so that it blasted everything
out of it.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, that's interesting. Yeah.
A few years later, he applied this observation to the design of an exploding torpedo that could be lowered into an oil well and detonated, shattering the surrounding rock.
Okay.
And when water was pumped into the well, the oil flows increased, sometimes as much as 1,200%.
Wow.
And just like that, fracking was born.
Dollar bills.
In the 1940s, explosives were replaced with high pressure blasts of liquids. And so hydraulic fracking became the standard in the oil and gas industry. It wasn't until the beginning of the 21st century that two key changes helped spark fracking's current boom. One was the use of slick water, a mix of water, sand, and chemicals to make the fluid less viscous, so it flowed better. And the other innovation was pairing fracking with that horizontal drilling. So that increased the productive potential of each well because it could reach more rock formations that way. So
I just got gas in my car today, so this is very fresh in my mind.
it is.
Yeah.
These advances, combined with an influx of investment into high global fossil fuel prices, I mean,
Which
oil
I
and
paid today.
natural gas prices have just gone through the roof. So fracking just went into overdrive. Of the approximately 1 million US wells that were fractured between 1940 and 2014, about 1/3 of those were fractured after the year 2000. So this has really been a boom in the last 20 years. And so that's because of those skyrocketing prices, so there's big money involved, and also the way of conventionally getting those fossil fuels, like those resources are depleted. You know, like the old style, imagine like the oil things that go up and down.
Well, I've seen those
pumping it out,
like in Denver, for example. They're everywhere.
Or on like the old Dallas TV show.
I don't understand.
You don't know the reference.
No.
You don't understand. You
understand.
don't care.
No
It's fine.
entiendo.
What is in fracking fluid?
I
Nobody
don't know.
knows. Nobody knows.
How does nobody know?
No, well, the companies know.
Well, that's not fair. That's like McDonald's. Like, come on. At a certain point, you got to tell us what's in your meat, man.
Well, most states with oil and gas production have rules requiring disclosure of chemicals used in fracking. Those rules often contain exclusions for, quote, confidential business information, unquote, which can be used to shield the identities of chemicals that are considered trade secrets.
Okay.
The EPA identified over 1,000 different chemicals that could be used in fracking formulas. Common ingredients, very unhealthy, include methanol, ethylene glycol, and propargyl alcohol. And these chemicals, very hazardous to human health. And the potential health impacts of the majority of chemicals really aren't known because we just don't have the information about the hazards and risks. Well, they're not disclosing.
Well,
so we can't really study it.
Term, yeah, you need more time to go by to watch people die.
Let's dive deeper into fracking.
Okay.
Are you getting a bad feeling about it?
I mean, yeah, I feel like I if somebody's mentioned fracking now, I have a visual image of fluids entering spaces, sand entering spaces, holding those spaces open. So
Proppants.
Yeah.
I like
proppants.
Proppants.
I like it.
I think it's a good term.
It's a good term. Listeners, you're lucky that you're not called proppants.
That's right.
Sometimes we just like the sound of something. You just stick with it for a little bit.
For a little bit until we forget.
I love that you forgot the instars is your own word.
Fracking consumes a massive amount of water, so this is one reason it's bad. The amount of water used per frack job has grown and exacerbates the impact on water supplies. In 2016, the average Texas Permian Basin fracking job used enough water to fill 16 Olympic swimming pools.
Which in a lot of these places that like experience drought, like taking that water when people are struggling to just maintain water for drinking.
Yeah. So using water, that's one thing. Water contamination is another reason fracking is bad.
I'm gonna take your water and spit in the cup you have left.
So
Rude.
threats to water include spills and leaks of fracking fluids, the injection of fluids into inadequately built wells.
I mean, that's just never a good idea to inject fluids into inadequately built anything.
It's never a good idea. And poor wastewater management practices.
What do they do with it once it's been contaminated?
Another reason fracking is bad is that operators can't completely control where the fractures occur.
Yeah.
And a fracture might extend farther than it intended. It can link up with a naturally occurring fault, other natural or man-made structures, or other wells, and then carry fluids to other geological formations,
causing
including potentially drinking water supplies.
Yeah, that all sounds bad.
It's not a precise science.
It kind of reminds me of the topic on the most dangerous job of tree felling.
Tree felling.
Yeah, of like they do all this planning and like it sounds really good, and then the tree snaps up and just like
what did your dad say? Could predict 100% that it would fall down.
Yeah. Exactly. It sounds exactly like that.
According to the EPA, there's a lack of data on how close these fractures are to underground aquifers. The agency was unable to determine with any amount of certainty whether fractures reached underground drinking water sources. Some fractured rock formations are separated from aquifers by thousands of feet. And in some cases, hydraulic fracturing occurs within a drinking water resource. For example, in the Pavilion gas field in the Wind River Basin of Wyoming, the same formation that contains natural gas also provides drinking water for the nearby town of Pavilion.
Ooh.
While the drinking water is generally shallower, so at a different level than the gas, there's no geologic barriers separating the two. And some of the private wells that provide drinking water have been contaminated with methane and other chemicals that may have escaped from the surface pits used to store wastewater, or from those improperly constructed wells. I think that's going to be our theme today, improperly constructed wells.
Just too immature for this topic. Every time you say fracking, I substitute it in my mind, and then there's some funny layouts.
We're children.
Play along.
It's okay.
Anytime you hear fracking, substitute with the other F word.
There's also wastewater mismanagement. The wastewater can enter and contaminate the environment in tons of different ways. For example, a broken North Dakota pipeline carrying produced water spilled about 3 million gallons of contaminants into a nearby creek. Oops.
Big oops.
There's also air pollution. This is, obviously a health threat. And this could be from venting gas just directly into the atmosphere, leaks, flaring, which is a controlled burn, the release of contaminants through lots of different parts of the production process. So bad air pollution stuff. Natural gas is made up mostly of methane, a potent greenhouse gas that traps more than 80 times as much heat as carbon dioxide.
Also found in a lot of cow farts, which we talked about in our big farming agriculture episode. Big farming.
You've done big pharma and big farming.
I've done both of those.
You've done both of the big fuzz.
The big fuzz. Now you got the big frack.
I'm doing the big frack. Yeah, so a broad range of health effects are associated with exposure to air pollutants, including mild to severe respiratory and neurological problems, cardiovascular damage, endocrine disruption, birth defects, cancer, and premature death.
I mean, death in general is not great, let alone premature.
This part disturbs me because I have related trauma. Earthquakes. Fracking.
Which totally makes sense. I mean, I don't know. It seems dangerous.
Yeah, it's creating earthquakes. There was an unprecedented increase in the number of earthquakes in the central part of the United States since 2009. And the U.S. Geological Survey determined that disposal wells, so remember that deep down place where they're putting that wastewater, are mostly to blame for this increase
Interesting.
in
So it's not
earthquakes.
even the fracking itself, it's the disposal of fluids.
Right. Yeah.
It's bad.
So the pressure exerted on a rock formation by the fluids injected into these disposal wells can cause faults to shift, resulting in human-induced earthquakes. How scary.
It is very scary.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna in a unrelated way say we've also had many topics that talk about injection of fluids in some way or another. I can't even list. There's many. We've had many.
Oh. You mean like
proboscis?
Heroin? Oh, okay.
Proboscis, heroin.
Proboscis and heroin.
The what's that stupid guy?
I think the proboscis is sucking the fluids though, not injecting them.
Oh, it's
a reverse process.
Okay, well, what about the
the semen guy?
Yeah,
serial semen donor.
Serial semen
That's
donor.
definitely injecting unwelcome fluids.
And that one doctor who injected and was killing people. No, stop injecting.
Just stop.
Injection should have a consent form.
All types. I agree. The central and eastern United States averaged just 25 annual earthquakes of a magnitude 3 or higher between 1973 and 2008, but experienced more than 1,000 of these quakes in 2015 alone.
What?
Yep.
That's alarming.
Yeah. And some of these man-made quakes have been large enough to cause property damage and injuries.
Why can't we have anything nice?
And this is happening in areas of the US that aren't considered earthquake prone, like Ohio and Oklahoma, which are now experiencing relatively strong seismic activity.
They already have tornadoes. You should just get one wild card max.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And what sucks is that the people making all the money off of this certainly don't live in those areas that are getting their
certainly not
water polluted or having earthquakes.
Certainly not. Yes.
Certainly
not. Environmental degradation.
I saved that one. I didn't spit that.
I wanted to add an extra G
degradation
in there, but it's degradation, not degradation.
Yeah, and we're not experts in words either.
No, especially not words.
we're kind of the worst at words.
We are learning.
We learn. Actually, all that we learn is that there's still more to know.
Yes, exactly. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know a thing. Fracking.
Sorry, I'm going to be sensitive about the topic all day today now.
Like other oil and gas operations, there's a lot happening at these sites. Let's just say.
Okay.
You have all these giant concrete pads they have to build. They have to build access roads there. There's pipelines. There's trucks, there's noise, there's lights, it's round the clock.
Porta potties.
It's so much.
Bagged lunches.
So this infrastructure madness can fragment forests and rural landscapes and degrade important wildlife habitat.
Yeah, I was wondering about how wildlife got impacted if they're important bugs and insects and animals.
Mule deer are being affected. I don't know why you are laughing.
So
this is serious.
I'm so serious.
Let's
that was
talk
the route
about...
I was going, and I was like, let me stand for the bugs.
Let me tell you about the plight of the mule deer.
Do you know how worms can regrow? Not if they've been blown up, they can't.
They can't.
But mule deer
definitely can't regrow.
They can't at all.
Whether they've been blown up or not.
I think we just need to make that known. Maybe that'll help in this cause.
One study of
what the frack is a mule deer?
Of the poor mule deer.
Sorry, I have to look up a picture.
In northwestern Colorado,
mm-hmm.
for example, found that natural gas drilling operations had compromised as much as half of the poor animals' critical winter habitat.
Okay, but these are like deer.
Yeah,
I was
they're
picturing.
called mule deer.
Okay, I thought I
What
was.
were you picturing? A hybrid? We're picturing a chimera
No, like
between
one
a
of the.
mule and a deer.
No, what are those like big ear with horn, like a
Like
jackalope?
ass of
A jackalope.
an ass of a deer and the head of a mule. Is
Like
that what you're
no, like a
picturing?
jackalope. They're like burrows in the ground and then gets blown up.
That's totally different. But
Well, that's good to know. And I think this is important for people to understand that
a mule deer is real
and that a jackalope is something different entirely.
and may not be real.
Well,
I'm not going to say definitively.
How deep does the fracking go? And do we know what that world looks like? It's like the ocean. We don't even really know.
We know nothing. That's we've
We
established.
blow up the evidence. So
Ugh, people. See, this is why we actually don't love people. Proof. So poor mule deer.
I was really hoping for something cuter, just to be honest.
They are cute. Look at that one right there. Look at those big ears.
I
Aw.
don't know. I've driven too many in like there. I don't want them to be blown up, but I've had too many of
They're not
these
being
looking
blown
things.
up. I
They're
never
not.
said mule deer were being blown up.
Wait,
This is why we get called out for inaccuracies.
this isn't about them, okay? This is about me and my understanding. Maybe you need to slow it down a little bit and explain it to me.
Their
Okay.
winter habitat has been impacted.
Did you tell me this already?
I did, but
I did not
I
listen.
think you were
to
talking
at
about
all.
jackalopes.
I was on a track.
You
Okay,
are.
so their winter habitats get destroyed.
Yes, and so that has
It melts-
really negatively impacted the
It melts
mule
the
deer
snow?
populations.
Did they write a grievance letter? What? What about their? I'm curious. Like, what about their habitat has been impacted about in the winter time?
Well, because it's probably filled with a giant concrete drilling pad and noise and truck traffic. Like, where are they going to go?
Oh, because they migrate there,
They can't go there anymore.
so they don't
it
go there.
sucks.
So they're.
They have nowhere to be in the winter. Where are they going to
If
go?
we
A
have
B&B?
seasonal migration patterns, then that shit needs to be protected. Where will you go? Underground. And then what happens? You get blown up. Done.
Mule deers are not getting blown up, Macy.
They're not crawling underground.
At least not yet.
Just wait until the mule deer uprising against frackers. This would be a great B movie. Like,
I would
action
love
movie.
it. Like
I would-
those old videos
Yeah.
you see where the deer is on its hind legs, like
Yes.
punching the hunter in the face. I love
Yeah.
those videos.
I may make something. I'll keep you posted.
Fracking in the US since 2014, hydraulically fractured horizontal wells have accounted for most of the new oil and gas wells, natural gas wells developed in the US, surpassing all other drilling
Because
techniques.
it sounds like there's no regulations. They can just keep making money.
There's lots of money in it and lots of shady regulations. Texas is the top producer of crude oil and natural gas. North Dakota ranks second for crude oil and Pennsylvania second for natural gas. However, about 30 states are estimated to sit above gas and oil-rich shale and other tight rock formations. Tight. I said tight again. I said that last episode too.
So tight.
It's so tight.
It's so outdated.
The fossil fuel industry has also set its sights on, it's so last episode, on areas such as the Florida Everglades.
I'm sure everyone's gonna go and try to find that now.
Including the Big Cypress National Preserve,
Ooh.
despite the tremendous environmental risks. I mean, so many animals have that as their habitat.
So
And we do
many
not want them to
animals.
get blown up.
No, and they might.
They might.
They might. Like, I'm just gonna go back to the worm. Like, his life is important. He helps things.
I value the worm. I don't consider it lowly. I love worms.
Geez, could you imagine all of a sudden that sand goes in there and he's like, we finally got super highways installed. Woo! And then
Ooh, too bad it's filled with toxins.
Yeah.
Did you ever read that book, How to Eat Fried Worms, when you were little? It was like a classic. Yeah.
Okay, now I feel like I need one
Have you ever
step
eaten a
further
worm?
Have you?
I may have eaten one of those at the bottom of a bottle of mezcal back in the day.
No, I've licked a slug. I've done that.
Oh, I heard you could die from that or get paralyzed.
That's a total lie.
No, look it up.
Your
That
tongue
happened
goes numb. My tongue went numb.
No, it happened to a kid. He got
Did he
paralyzed.
eat the slug?
I don't know if he ate
You
him
did
or
not
licked
just
him.
lick it.
Well,
Could I have died?
You could have
I
died
was unsupervised.
or been paralyzed. It happened to him. It's real.
What? Future episode.
It's sad because a dumb dare and his life has changed. Okay, back to fracking. I was surprised to learn that fracking occurs in California.
He died. He swallowed a whole live slug that paralyzed him.
Yeah, and he was like a young guy too.
Yeah.
Sad.
He was a teenage rugby player
Yeah.
in 2010 named Sam
Oh, he
Ballard.
died. He passed.
No, he passed.
Yeah, I didn't know he passed.
It's known as a rat lungworm. The
I think that
slug
should be a future topic for
likely
you.
picked up the rat droppings. Ugh. It led to bacterial meningitis. This is terrifying. I mean, I know enough already to know everything that happened from here on
To know
out.
that you shouldn't lick a slug. Don't lick a slug, people. It's not cute.
They could have rat meningitis.
So there's fracking in California. I was surprised. In 2014, 5.4 million people lived within a mile of one of the 84,000 plus existing oil and gas wells, 3,000 of which had been used for fracking. When fracking does occur in California, it's different from other places in the US.
Tell me how fracking in California is different than other places in the US.
It occurs at shallower depths
Oh,
and in closer proximity to drinking water sources,
interesting.
making it more risky
Bunch of hippies. Oh,
For-
so just kidding.
for the risk of water contamination.
Okay.
Washington became the fourth state to ban fracking with the passage of,
I didn't know that we banned it.
in 2019 with Senate Bill 5145. Fracking for both oil and natural gas is banned in our state.
Good job. I'm surprised that California didn't beat us to that.
I am
They usually
surprised
do.
as well.
Yeah, your homeland.
In a current event, fracking in the UK was halted a while back amid opposition from green groups and local concerns over earth tremors, as they call them there. But
That's cute.
but I know everything is better in British talk. But there have been calls to rethink the ban. This is just recently, given the soaring cost of energy. The government has said all options are on the table as it's been trying to end imports of Russian energy because of the conflict in Ukraine. It's a complex issue. I'm telling you, there's no. If there were easy answers, it would have been solved already. I watched a documentary. If you want to learn more, there's a documentary from 2009 called Split Estate, which really dives into the dirty secrets of fracking natural gas. So I learned that people don't own the mineral rights under their own land, and that an energy company can just walk onto your land and start drilling just right next to your front door.
Interesting.
And
If it's from
little
the
you
government.
can do about it. No, these are companies, and there's little you can do
That's
about
so
it.
crazy. But like, how does all of a sudden the company own the rights to it?
Well, listen to what I learned.
All right.
So the split estate concept dates back to when kings would retain the rights to any gold and silver deposits that might be under the land where people lived.
Trickery. Bunch of bullshit.
When the US was homesteaded, our government continued this tradition of separate above and below ownership.
Yeah. They want
So-
the resources.
So if there's something of value under
Can someone
our
purchase
land,
it? Is that what's
they
happening?
can just drill it down into it.
Oh, so it basically has no owner.
No, the companies can
But how
just
do
get
they?
the rights.
Oh, so they pay for the rights.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was
Yes.
trying to figure out. So they
But it's not like the owners are benefiting. Their rights are being eroded, their communities are being
Right.
destroyed. I mean, I was watching on this video, they're putting these things right next to like elementary schools,
Mhm.
and their property is being devalued and their health, health concerns. So
Right.
it's not like the people are benefiting, it's the companies that are benefiting. So companies have been
Boo.
aggressively pursuing mineral rights to private and public lands all over the US since the boom began 20 years ago under the Bush-Cheney administration. Companies are supposed to negotiate with landowners, but if no agreement can be made, the companies can just proceed anyway.
So there's no incentive.
And the
to do
landowners
anything.
are powerless. Yeah. On that documentary, there was one fellow that said he had made an agreement with the company that they were going to stay away from. I mean, that land had been in his family for generations, and they had a family burial plot, and they weren't supposed to touch it.
Yeah.
And they went in and just plowed it all over. So he doesn't even know where the grave markers are, where the graves are anymore from his family's.
And after
graves.
our outing out to the graveyard, I feel super passionate about the fact that like people should be able to find their people.
Graves should be marked.
Yes.
People should, or else they just can get forgotten. That's heartbreaking.
See, whoa.
Oh.
I'm not sure how you projectiled that across the
No, that was a pretty cool
table.
trick.
I'm seeing a couple of threads of similarity between my topic. We'll see if you can pick them up when I go.
Yeah, so water shouldn't burn.
No?
Here, watch this video.
Was this like the fluoride in the water?
Match to my water, and like I said, it is unpredictable, but the methane randomly travels with the water, and sometimes it will light quite
This is just-
spectacularly.
She's just putting a regular match on her kitchen sink water.
Oh my God.
See that giant burst of flame? Look at that.
Her hand is, oh my God.
Giant flames. Like,
That's why your water's sputtering, because there's gases in it.
yeah, there's
I'm gonna
literally gas coming out of her faucet.
do this right now. I'm gonna be dangerous.
Isn't that cray-cray?
What? I would have words.
That's
to
just
say.
one example of the way people
Well,
are impacted
and
by
then- and this
fracking
is
on
where
a
you
personal
talk about-
level.
Talk about privilege, because if someone who can't afford to move, or heaven forbid they love where they're at, they can't go or they won't go. But if you're rich and have money, you just relocate somewhere else and get the benefits of being away from those places and let people suffer. It's terribly unfair.
Terribly unfair, yes.
Certainly.
I wanted to mention something called the Halliburton loophole. Despite the widespread fracking and
Why did you turn this?
because I was putting it on the video, and the risk it poses to human health and safe drinking water supplies, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, does not regulate the injection of fracturing fluids under the Safe Drinking Water Act. Isn't that interesting?
That
Seems
is
like it would
interesting.
be regulated.
You would think, since it goes into your drinking water.
The oil and gas industry is the only industry in America that is allowed by the EPA to inject known hazardous materials, unregulated, unchecked, directly into or adjacent to underground drinking water supplies.
And I'll just say, fucking wrong. And I
Bullshit.
said the real word.
You did.
I did.
This exemption from the Safe Drinking Water Act has become known as the Halliburton loophole because it is widely perceived to have come about as a result of the efforts of Vice President Dick Cheney's Energy Task Force. Before taking office, Cheney was CEO of Halliburton, which
What?
patented.
What?
You didn't know any of this?
Well, I mean, I could care less at that point in my life about Dick Cheney. I just knew I didn't like him.
But see, isn't it good to have facts? Cheney
Yeah.
was CEO of
I was in high
Halliburton, which patented hydraulic fracturing in the 40s. Isn't that interesting? Halliburton originally patented fracking
All these
in the
people
40s
with their
and
specialized interests, and it's everybody. It's everybody. Stop it.
and remains one of the three largest manufacturers of fracturing fluids. So I just want to say it's called the Halliburton loophole because it's widely perceived to have come about as a result
Of that.
of those efforts.
Like it's not, yeah.
All right, final topic, final bit of this.
Mm-hmm.
Is Rupaul a fracker?
What?
Frack, no, I hoped when I saw that headline.
Oh, frack, no. Tell me more.
Well, some believe Rupaul is a fracker, and I didn't want to believe it, so I've tried to look into it. During a conversation on NPR's Fresh Air in early 2020, Rupaul sparked concerns
Great name for
that oil companies may be fracking on his 60,000 acre ranch in eastern Wyoming. He said, quote, "It's a modern ranch, 21st century ranch. It's really land management," he said. And he said, one aspect is to, quote, lease the mineral rights to oil companies and you sell water to oil companies, unquote. So memes immediately started going around showing Rupaul, as a fracker. There were a lot of irresponsible, I say, headlines calling out Rupaul as a fracker without actually giving the full information. Like this is an example of one of the memes. So
oh wow.
He's in
Bad
drag attire, it says Rupaul's frack race.
Like cowboy drag attire.
Yeah. And one of the headlines was, how does Rupaul make and spend his drag race millions? The LGBT icon has a net worth of $60 million, but how much comes from fracking and farming on his Wyoming ranch?
Okay.
So I call that irresponsible because when I looked a little further into it, it's not his ranch. It's his husband's ranch.
Oh.
And they don't live there. I believe Rupaul has a huge house in San Francisco. So his husband, George LeBar, inherited this. So it's a family ranch that he inherited. They go there sometimes for a vacation spot. 60,000 acres, that's a big spot.
Yeah.
And so in this area, there are 60 producing, or on this ranch, there are 60 producing oil wells and 144 wells waiting for approval on this property. And so, like we've just discussed, owning the land does not mean you have any say in what goes on.
Yeah, it makes it sound like they're choosing to have fracking happen, but fracking's gonna happen anyways, and they are trying to negotiate something that might benefit them as their rights are being taken away.
Yeah, I think
rights.
Yeah, there's so much we don't know about this, but to just say
just,
Rupaul is a fracker without getting more
I know exactly
behind it.
What they're doing. It's people who don't like Rupaul, and they're specifically trying to say see, bad person, even though these are probably people who like fracking, but they just want to try to damage the reputation of someone who may be perceived as liberal, perhaps, in my opinion.
I think it's people that are more environmentalist types and feel didn't really look into it and just heard that Rupaul is a fracker and just got on the wagon. That's what I think.
I think it's a bunch of fake news.
So they can't say no to oil and gas development on the land.
Yeah.
So that I think needs to be pointed out.
So it's and it's if you went to any of these farmers and just you blame them, blame the companies, blame the people who are putting in the fracking in the first place.
And if you don't like fracking, do some advocacy work. That's what I'd say.
Well, yeah, and I think that's
because maybe your state could ban it too. Washington did, so it's possible.
Well, and go after the billionaires who are making money off of it, not the landowner who is not making money off of that.
Frack, yes.
How
frack, no.
I just don't
and frack, yes.
The idea that they're using someone's legitimate success against them. Who cares if she made? I don't know enough about Rupaul.
He's a he out of drag,
but
and
does
she
drag
in drag.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so
good clarification.
Yeah, so he has legitimately made money through his business and entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And that has nothing to do with this whatsoever. So even just putting his earnings and saying, how dare he make this much money, it has nothing to do with fracking.
No, it has nothing to do. That's why I called it an irresponsible headline.
Stupid.
Well, that's that.
That's that.
I'm going to pee really quick
Go pee really quick.
during our topic break. We can talk.
Okay, I'm gonna talk. I heard when I was driving through Montana that there are specific places where like there's nuclear launch pads, and I actually saw some of them, and they're like gated off and you can see them from the road. But apparently like underneath the earth, that's where like if something happened, they would like come up and out. It just amazes me when you go to these rural places and you see like all this big tech, like even fracking. That's a lot of money and technology and high tech technology just out in these rural communities. There's a lot of money out there. And she's back.
I'm back.
Okay.
What's your topic?
I have no idea what I talked about. No, I just talked about random launch pads for nukes I saw in rural areas. Okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. I am going to talk about. Okay, well, first,
The
okay.
suspense.
So, have you heard of the term? And this is more of an English slang term, so you may not have heard this before. But the term sweet Fanny Adams.
No, I haven't.
You haven't. Okay. So
I've heard the term sweet Fanny, like
a butt.
hey, you got a pretty sweet Fanny.
Totally unrelated.
Okay.
Okay, let's just watch that right off the bat. Okay, so sometimes it'll show up as sweet FA for short.
Or sweet AF.
No,
Oh.
also wrong.
Also different
and squash
and
that.
Okay.
Okay, get on track with me here. Okay, so this term, sweet Fanny Adams, it's been used actually since the mid 20th century.
You're telling me to get on track with you when you're talking about exploding mule deer during my topic.
All right, fine. I'll stop snapping at you. So this term has been used since the mid 20th century. And it was really tied with like currently it's been so watered down, it literally means nothing at all.
Oh.
So when you say sweet Fanny Adams, it means nothing.
But it used to be a big
No, like you're referring to nothing.
Oh.
Yeah, like an actual this means
it
the
means
concept
nothing.
of nothing. Yes.
Oh, got it.
Right. Okay. So, but prior, it actually in the 1860s became naval slang to describe this new tinned meat, which was that they ate, and it was on the boats, and so they called it sweet Fanny Adams, which kind of meant canned meat.
Oh.
Okay. And then it got watered down over time to mean nothing at all.
I love me a canned meat.
Okay. You're gonna probably regret saying that. Okay. So let's chat. So sweet Fannie Mae. Wow, Fannie Mae loans literally just got into my brain. Sweet Fanny Adams was an actual little girl. And this is her face, little John picture there. She was 8 years old. Okay. So I'm going to tell you the story about Fanny Adams and where this term, which in England is still used as common slang, and people, when you ask them about it, this is a documentary I watched about it, didn't know where it came from, but they use it commonly.
Okay.
Okay. So she was born in 1859 to give timeline context, and lived on Tanhouse Lane on the northern side of Alton in Hampshire, England. So she lived with her father and 5 siblings. The family were locally rooted in this town. This town is pretty small. Everyone there knew each other. They had been kind of rooted there as a settlement for a long time. So everybody knew everybody. Fanny was described as being a tall, I hate it when people describe people like this, but what is it? A comely?
Oh, Or they're
that
trying to say that
they're
she's
ugly.
not pretty.
Yeah.
I hate that too.
And it's so tall, comely, intelligent girl. How about you just say she's tall and intelligent and
Yeah.
like
Well, keep your opinions about her face to yourself.
right? So she actually appeared older than other girls her age because she was really tall. She
And
was
comely.
I know, I just hate like that ruins like the first part of it for me. So she was known as being cheerful, super talkative, and was known to like talking with the townspeople.
She had a lot of strengths.
Very bright, engaging young girl. So Fanny's best friend, Minnie Warner,
I love
which,
his old names, Minnie
right?
and Fanny.
Aren't they adorable? Was the same age and lived right next door. And like her grandparents lived on the other side. So again, you see how like tight knit these communities are. This town of Alton was really known for its brewery. So all around, if you picture this town in the center, all around it were fields that got the hops for the brewery.
Mm.
And so a lot of the kids, like there's meadows around there that one of them is called Flood Meadow, and the surrounding River Way is what it's called. That gets a lot of heavy rain. This is where the kids often would play. So the community was really built around this brewery, and this is where the community was surrounding. So Alton had no crime at all during the 19th century. So none of these people had ever experienced crime in their town. The
Wow.
afternoon, right, of August 24th, 1867, it was reported as being very sunny and hot. It's August. It was around the time that Fanny, along with her sister Lizzie and her best friend Minnie, Minnie, Fanny,
Cute.
asked her mother Harriet if she could go out to the flood meadow. No objections. They go out there all the time. They play all the time. There's no problems. Fanny and other local children, it's pretty close proximity too, so it's not like super far away. And as the girls were walking towards Flood Meadow into a hop garden, so where the hops were being grown, they met a man named Frederick Baker, a 29-year-old solicitor's clerk. He was wearing a frock coat, light colored trousers, and a tall hat. Baker had moved from his former home in Guilford to work and live in Alton about 12 months prior. So he'd only been there for about 12 months. He was employed by solicitor Mr. Clements, whose office was on Alton Street. And Baker gave Minnie and Lizzie 3 halfpence to spend on sweets and Fanny, and gave Fanny another halfpenny. He was trying to give them money to follow him to the next town over.
Wait, what?
So he's meets
luring them?
Yeah. So he asked.
Is he nefarious?
He asked Fanny first, offered her a coin, a halfpenny, and she said no. She wanted to stay with her sister and her friend. And when she declined, he offered and gave three halfpence to the other ones.
Get them on board.
To see if they would go. And they said no, they want to stay. So at this point, because they were out there eating blackberries, like they were having fun. They didn't want to go, but there was nothing inherently wrong with talking to him. They knew him from church at that point, and he was there in the community.
They probably hadn't had the talk on stranger danger.
No, not at all. So
this is in the era before windowless vans.
Mm-hmm. And exactly. Well, and this is what he did. So kids refused. So he just grabs Fanny, picks her up, and walks away. So he was a bigger, tall guy. So he just used what he had at the time against her, which was his size. So Lizzie and Minnie run. So they see all of this. They run back to Tannhouse Lane, straight to Martha Warner. So Minnie's mom. She ignored them.
What?
Because again, there's been no crime here ever. And like the youngest, I saw a picture of her and she's little. Like I could see you being like, okay, you're just joking, or that's just a story, and like brushing it off. And that's what she did. She didn't believe them.
You gotta believe your kids.
Right. So it wasn't until about, and I think this was like a couple hours later, until 5:00 p.m. So I think The timeline was until about 3 something. So it wasn't until 5 that they made their way home for dinner. And Miss Gardner, the mom of Fanny and Lizzie, who also lived on Tanhouse Lane, noticed Fanny's absence and asked the girls, like, what's going on? Where is she? The children said what had occurred and told Miss Gardner that Fanny had been taken away by Baker. Miss Gardner relayed this information, to Fanny's mother, Harriet. Miss Gardner was, I believe, the neighbor.
They're like we said, she got taken away.
They met with Baker. So they actually went and met with him. Only going a short distance, they found him near a gate separating the hop garden from Flood Meadow. According to the Hampshire Chronicle, Miss Gardner asked Baker what he had done with the child. Baker assured her that he often gave money to children for buying sweets and that he didn't take the child. And Miss Gardner replied, I have a great mind to give you in charge of the police, to which Baker told her she could do what she liked. Baker's position in town as a solicitor's clerk initially deflected suspicions because he seemed reputable. He was well put together. And he was everything I read about this, he was very calm, cool, and collected through all of this. So they both returned home, believing that Fanny was still just playing somewhere nearby.
They believed him.
So now it's between 7 and 8 p.m. Fanny still didn't come home, prompting Harriet, her mom, and a group of neighbors to start searching. As the evening was setting, the group was searching the place called the Hollow around there with no success. In the nearby hop garden, however, there was a laborer named Thomas Gates, who's a Crimean War veteran, found Fanny's head.
What?
Stuck on 2 hop poles while he was tending to the crops.
Hot poles.
Hop poles.
Hop poles.
Hop for the hops for the breweries that they grow on.
What did that fucking the frock coat do?
Right. So, and because this is a small community, it's pretty obvious that it's her.
Poor Fanny.
It gets worse.
Oh.
Fanny's ears had been severed from her head, which had 2 large cuts from her mouth to her ears across the temple. Further investigation discovered her head, arms, and legs were all separated from the trunk. There were 3 incisions on the left side of the chest and a deep cut on the left arm, dividing her muscles. Fanny's forearm was cut at the elbow joint.
Ugh.
And her left leg was nearly severed at the hip, with her left foot cut off at the ankle point. Her right leg was actually forcibly torn from the trunk.
What in the hell?
And the whole contents of her pelvis and chest were completely removed. 5 further incisions were made on her liver. Her heart had been cut out and her vagina was missing. Both of her eyes were cut out and were found in the nearby riverway.
Let's hope she was dead when all this happened.
So I do have some information that probably, because they were trying to figure out what actually killed her.
Yeah.
And they did end up finding 2 small knives. But they did find a rock that had blood and hair on it. So they're thinking that she was hit.
Hopefully she was at least knocked out.
Yeah. Because this is horrific. I told you before this, like I stumbled across this when looking at other things, and I seldom find something that's like worse than the headlines for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was like the more I dug, the more horrifying it was. And
I just want to know, like, why did he do all those things?
And I just want to say though, this made me, with the shootings at the elementary school
in Uvalde, Texas,
it made me think about this false sense of security of, I'm sending my child somewhere that I know is safe.
Well, school should be safe.
School should be safe. The field where your children play next to your house should be safe too. And I mean, really, it should. And it's this sense of security that just gets rocked. And then when you don't have answers because there is no logical reason that will ever make this okay, no answer helps. So that's what this really reminded me of when like listening to like the parents in this, and
Oh, it's just heartbreaking.
yeah,
Our hearts do go out to everybody
Absolutely.
affected, especially the families that
yeah.
lost their kids or other family members.
And that's honestly
Horrible.
reading this.
I
made
hope
me
it's
think
the
of
last
that.
one. I hope like something changes.
Me too.
It can't happen again.
So they find all this stuff in this search. Overwhelmed with grief, her mom collapsed on her way trying to tell her husband he was gone playing cricket. So word was sent to him, and when George, the husband, was told, he returned home to take his loaded shotgun and set out to look for the culprit. But neighbors stopped him and instead sat with him through the night. So the neighbors didn't fully know what had been found yet. And I'm wondering if that would have impacted what they would have allowed him to do.
Yeah. Maybe the whole neighborhood would have gone out.
Yeah, because he, I think, was informed just about the surface bit about his daughter being killed and the last man who was seen with her. So he had that level of information. So people, the next day, all those people started visiting the hop gardens to help collect her remains. And that's when it became more known. They were spread out intentionally. The police tried unsuccessfully to find the murder weapons, as they suspected that small knives were used. It's likely that the crowd of searchers may have actually trampled them down.
I mean, was there like precision involved, or is it just so animalistic?
Oh, no, you mean with him?
Yeah, with like the damage that he did to her.
It definitely was not noted as being like medical precision by any means.
So it's just like this primal vicious attack.
Yes. So most of her body parts were collected on that day, but an arm, a foot, and intestines were not found until the next morning. One foot was still in the shoe, and in her hand they found clutched the 2 halfpence that Baker had given to her. The breastbone was never found. Fanny's remains were taken to the doctor's surgery so post-mortem could be carried out. So they did find the stone at this point and found hair sticking to it. So that's what they think might have been the actual murder weapon. Because at this point, what I found was really sad is in her like death report, it doesn't, you know how normally it says the cause of death? They could not determine cause of death because of how mutilated she was. Like even
so they're not 100% sure at what point she died and what she may have experienced.
And even when they found her head, like it was so mutilated at that point, they just had to assume it was her because she was missing. That's how bad it was. So they on this report they put death caused by, and they put Baker's name as the cause of death.
Okay, that's an interesting way to
it is
put it,
because they were like, we can't point to anything but him.
But do they have evidence that he was the one? I mean, yes, there's the circumstantial with him carrying her off, and
let's dive in. Okay. So that evening, Police Superintendent William Cheney hurried from the police station to Flood Meadow. He was met by several people who then led him to what was called the Leathern Bottle, which was a building. Upon arrival, the proprietor of the house handed Cheney a bundle labeled "Portions of a Child." And with the help of some of his officers, they organized a search for missing body parts.
Why are we labeling things like that?
Right. Hearing that Baker had been the last one to see the children made him kind of the prime suspect, honestly. That was it made sense in this small of town. Arriving at the solicitor's office at 9 p.m., he found Baker still at work, an hour later than usual. Baker protested, claimed his innocence, despite being informed that he was the only suspect. Cheney had no alternative but to arrest him on suspicion of murder. By this time, a large and agitated crowd was forming outside, forcing the police to actually kind of smuggle him out, worried that the mob would kill him first.
So word had gotten out.
Yes, absolutely. Because this whole community had to help find her body.
Ugh.
So yeah, and not just upset, but part of
a child. That is just
portions of a child.
Twisted.
Absolutely. So they did find on Baker 2 unstained small knives. There were spots of blood on him. They questioned him and he said, well, I don't see a scratch or cut on my hand to account for the blood, is what he said. Baker's conduct was cool and collected.
Cocky.
Mm-hmm. Sometime after the arrest, Cheney backtracked to Baker's desk in the solicitor's office and discovered a diary at his desk and some legal papers. There was an entry made for that Saturday, the 24th, August 1867, which recorded, killed a young girl. It was fine and hot.
Hot? Probably not our
Temperature.
meaning of hot. Okay.
Probably. That's very.
I was like, wait, this is a whole nother level.
This was a long time ago.
Burn your journal, people.
Burn your journal. The Hampshire Chronicle reported that the hop garden had been cleared on September 21st, but nothing connected with the murder had been found. It also added that Baker remained completely unfazed with the murder. He didn't exhibit any symptoms of insanity or remorse. He
Sounds
didn't
like
admit
a psychopath.
anything. Right. So added to confusion because Baker stated that he was intoxicated when he saw the children, but all evidence and witnesses claim that that wasn't true because he went back to work and was fine. So the investigation then continued through to October, and a young boy came up in October and he lived close to the Adams family, and he came forward as a witness. The boy testified that he saw Baker emerge from the hop garden at 2 p.m. on the day Fanny was murdered, with his hands and clothes saturated with blood. Baker then was reported to have been like stooping down in the river, calmly wiping himself with a handkerchief. After which he put a small knife and another unidentified object in his jacket pocket. The boy related this story did tell his mom this story at the time, but she didn't tell anybody until she spoke in a pub about it 2 months later. And then as police were investigating, that's how they kind of funneled down him as a witness.
I mean, I would imagine he'd be completely head to toe covered with blood.
Well, but you'd be wrong.
Why would I be?
I'll tell you more. So Cheney requested an immediate forensic test in late October. All recovered clothing, the 2 knives from Baker when he was arrested, all went to A.S. Taylor at Guy's Hospital in London. They received detailed tests for the period. After examining the items, they were able to confirm the blood was human on the knives. One of the small knives contained a small amount of coagulated blood, although none was on the handle. Under cross-examination, Taylor stated he would have expected more blood on the knives, like you're saying, and signs of rust if they had been washed. So the quantity of blood found, however, was pretty small. On his person, he only had a few drops, and on the knives, not much. So this was surprising. And Taylor opinioned that an inexperienced person armed with a proper weapon could dismember a body in about half an hour. And he said blood would still run, but would not have spurted from the body. Further examination of Baker's clothes uncovered some small traces on his waistcoat, trousers, and stockings, but not like where you'd imagine like spurting blood on you. So that kind of makes sense if he's like, blood wouldn't spurt at that point.
I just imagine you'd have to be like just down in it.
Which means she'd be dead when he killed her because the blood wouldn't be flowing anymore. Like the heart wouldn't be pumping blood, so it wouldn't be spurting. So hopefully, to me, that's a little bit like, I hope she was knocked out by the rock. So
he sounds like a bad man.
He is a bad man. Okay. So there was no signs of rape on the body, which I thought was interesting with the amount of like the particulars of like taking the vagina. Like we've talked about other past serial killers where like the female body portions are specifically targeted in ways. But not every serial killer had rape involved in that. It was more about the mutilation aspect. So Dr. Lewis Leslie from Alton thought Fanny's ultimate cause of death was probably the blow to the head with the stone. Leslie speculated that a larger instrument had to have been used to cut the body, even though they didn't have that. They never found that. And also added that the dismemberment was achieved in less than an hour. That's really quick for the amount of damage he caused. Forensics indicated that cuts had been made when the body was still warm, and that Fanny had not only been cut, but also hacked and torn.
Dismemberment is just something I cannot
Horrifying.
wrap my brain around.
That's, yeah, like when you think about like even medieval times when they would dismember people for torture, like, oh no, that sounds horrifying. The time it had taken Baker to cut the body into so many pieces most likely gave him the opportunity to choose his positioning so that he may not get covered in blood. So because someone could do it in half an hour with the proper weapon, they're assuming he had the proper weapon, they just didn't find it. Yes, he may have had the small knives too, but they think there's something else. And that means he had double the amount of time to be careful about not getting a ton of blood on him and positioning himself in ways around the body to not have more blood. So he continued throughout all this to say he's innocent and that he hoped the guilty party would be found. Okay, so English law at the time required that in case of sudden death, an immediate inquest had to be held under the jurisdiction of a coroner. In the case of Fanny Adams' inquest, Deputy County Coroner Robert Harfield was in charge of the proceedings, which were held it was renamed George, in Alton. So this was all still just in the town. Cheney was in attendance along with the chief constable. And the first to give evidence was Minnie Warner, the friend who told them about the money. And actually Baker she had said it wrong, that he had only given them 2 halfpence. And he's like, no, I gave you 3. So like, he's not arguing at all that he gave them money. He just says, I gave them money for candy. And, but then comes the testimony of the boy, and they really have at this point all the evidence they need at this time for what they could. And as the trial took place, his defense team tried to say that the knives were too small to commit the crime, and that they also tried to argue for insanity, saying that Baker's father had been violent, a cousin had been in multiple asylums, and his sister had died of a brain fever, and he himself attempted suicide after a love affair.
What's a brain fever?
I don't know. Something of the time. I know, it's like, what was that? So there is family mental health history, and he had a suicide attempt after a love affair, which I thought was
I mean, no doubt something had to have occurred, either biologically or in his life experience, because this is out of the norm.
This is not typical. No. The defense also argued that the diary entry, right, was typical for a quote epileptic, old terminology, or formal way of entry. So they actually said that it wasn't a confession because he didn't have a comma after the word killed.
Oh, will you read the diary entry again? Do you have that again?
Yeah, let me scroll back up. Okay, it said, killed a young girl. It was fine and hot.
So there was no comma after girl?
No, after killed. So they're saying killed a young girl, not killed a young girl, because they're saying grammatically that's not.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think that's stretching a little.
I think so too. It's like stretching a lot.
I thought they were going to say like, oh no, he was just writing a poem.
No, I think it's more of like that if he was specifying that he had killed the girl, grammatically, there would be a comma there to then specify what he had killed, which is not typically how that goes in a journal because we're not stupid. Okay, so.
And then no DNA back then, so they couldn't match the blood.
Right. They just knew it was human blood. So, I mean, not helpful, really. And okay, so the justice invited the jury to consider a verdict of not responsible by reason of insanity, but they returned a guilty verdict after just 15 minutes. Again, this is in the community, so good luck getting an impartial jury. On December, I don't think it mattered anyways, but just to point it out, on December 24th, on Christmas Eve, Baker was hanged outside Winchester Prison. The crime had become notorious, and a crowd of 5,000 people, mostly women and children, attended to watch. this was the last public execution that was held at that prison.
The concept of public executions, it's
So
so interesting.
it is really
It's so
interesting.
different than anything that
And because you would think
experience.
like, oh, I wouldn't want to see that, but like people
No, it was-
did go
no,
and
they would-
watched.
It would be a family day out with picnics and everything.
Yeah, it's odd. Future topic. All
Future
right.
topic.
So, so that happened. For his death, Baker actually wrote to the Adams family expressing his sorrow for what he had done in an unguarded hour and seeking their forgiveness.
Mm.
Following his execution, Baker's death mask was made, and the following year, his full figure was placed as an exhibit in the Chamber of Horrors at Madame Tussauds' famous waxworks in London. All right. Fanny was buried in Alton Cemetery. The headstone erected by voluntary subscription reads. So their whole point of doing this level of details, they did not want her to be forgotten. Sacred to the memory of Fanny Adams, aged 8 years and 4 months, who was cruelly murdered on Saturday, August 24th, 1867. Fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him, capital H, which is able to destroy both body and soul in hell. Matthew 10, verse 28.
She's only 8, poor thing.
There's her little, her gravestone. Very nice
Aw.
gravestone. So they really tried to keep her name alive
Mhm.
and not forget her. And that was something that this town really celebrated, is her memory. And over time that became slang. And it was interesting because like people would hear the name, and it wasn't until that it was on a British seaman on the ships that started in 1869 that they got the meat tin rations, and they just suggested that it be the butchered remains of Fanny Adams because it was so bad.
Ah, that's terrible.
So Fanny Adams became slang for mediocre mutton, like a stew.
That does not honor her memory.
No, and it basically meaning that it was worthless. And so you can see how over time that gets watered down to meaning nothing. And so even the large tins that the muttons were delivered in, these are cooking pots, are still known as fannies.
Interesting.
By the mid 20th century, many working class men were pretending to their sons and social superiors that their own favorite expressions, what they called sweet FA, stood for Sweet Fanny Adams, with the commonplace meaning of total inaction or downtime, while they and their peers used the expression among themselves to mean sweet fuck all.
Oh.
So, like, don't give a shit, right?
Yeah.
Means nothing. Sweet Fanny Adams has lingered as a euphemism of that expletive sense. And I just want to say, I don't think that's nice.
It's not very nice.
It's not nice, because this is a topic that turned upside down for me, because it started with the topic of the mutton, and I was like, "What? Okay, wait," and then it kind of unearthed Fanny Adams from that, and like people still use that, and it's horrible.
Well, if I
Like,
hear
this is about a
somebody use
little
that,
girl.
I
I mean,
will smack those words right out.
I've
of
never
their
heard
mouths.
it in the US, so I'm curious if any
I've never
any
heard it.
listeners afar.
You
have
tell
heard
of
it.
us. You tell us,
Sweet FA,
listeners from afar.
sweet fuck all,
I-
sweet frack all.
I do like spam sushi. That's what I was referring to when I said I like a canned meat. It's
Gotcha.
good.
Do you regret saying it now though? a little
No,
bit?
because I still
Okay,
like it.
that's fine.
Tasty.
So that is
That's a good topic.
the life and story of Fanny Adams, and I hope that
People stop using her name in vain.
that, and I don't like, it's so bad to say, but like there's so much. It's sad that people can't trust the inherent good in things,
No,
like your kids going and play, your kids going to school,
you
those sorts of
can't.
things. It's very sad that you can't.
Most people are good, I believe.
Most people are good.
But then
It only
there's
takes one person.
fucks like this guy that just ruin it for everybody. Though I do have to say, in his defense, I did not hear a lot of strong evidence.
Confession. With the date that he killed a girl.
The
he
journal
was there.
entry.
He was his journal entry, and he was the last person seen with them. And the boy saw him washing blood off of himself in the river, but that came 2 months later. So who knows?
I know, but none of it's like
But I think
hard. Like nobody
Right.
witnessed him like
murdering
actually
and
killing
doing
her.
any of
Yeah.
those things. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's hard, because this small community as well, like everyone knows everybody. Here's someone that's new, could be an easy target as well in that way.
Nobody likes the new guy.
But to me, like him admitting it after having blood on
I
his
mean,
clothes.
he probably did it.
Yes. Well, and he had blood on his clothes, and
It's
they
just-
said, and he's like, well, I don't have any cuts.
No, I mean,
Like, well, why would you say that?
yeah, why would you
If
say
if
that?
you're not,
It's an interesting response.
it is an
sir.
interesting response.
I didn't ask you if you had cuts. I asked you about the blood.
Yes, and it would be a very odd story for the other two kids, because they did witness him carry her off,
Yeah.
at least. So
I wonder
there's
if
at
that
least
first
witnesses.
mom had believed her kid could
Could
have been
timeline,
saved.
yeah,
Who
because
knows?
he took an hour, and then they didn't find her till 5. So I mean, that's like,
Who knows
who
what was going
knows?
on during that time?
yeah, someone could have at least interrupted something.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Good topic.
Until next time.
Say no to fracking. Frack no.
Frack no. And let's make sweet Fanny Adams mean something nice. I don't know. What could it mean? What could it mean instead?
Something sweet.
Innocence.
Innocence. Let's rebrand it. Let's reclaim it. Done.
Bye.